It was supposed to be a quiet trip, just a weekend away from the city noise, the deadlines, the artificial lights. I had rented a small cabin near a coastal village in Maine. Sleepy, fog covered, where time seemed to slow down. I needed that. What I didn't expect was the lighthouse. The locals didn't talk about it directly. When I asked about the tall, crumbling structure I'd seen perched on the cliffs during my drive-in, their answers were vague. Shrugs, uneasy glances, old men mumbling something about bad tides and things best left alone. One elderly woman, running a tiny convenience store, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "That place don't shine no more." Not since 1972, I laughed it off. Superstitions, I told myself. Every small town had its ghosts. I was a rational person. I liked old places, history, mystery. The idea of an abandoned lighthouse on the edge of the world? It was too tempting to ignore. So that evening, just before sunset, I followed a narrow path that wended its way through thick coastal shrubs and dry grass. The fog had started to roll in, painting everything in shades of gray. The sound of the crashing waves grew louder with every step, the cliffs growing steeper and more menacing. I finally reached a rusted iron gate that hung loosely from its hinges. Beyond it stood the lighthouse, tall, skeletal, and absolutely still. Its paint had long since peeled away, revealing the weather-beaten stone beneath. The glass at the top was shattered in places. The door at the base hung ajar. I paused. My phone had no signal, and the sun was slipping fast beneath the horizon. But something about the place pulled me in. Maybe it was the eerie silence, broken only by the distant cawing of seabirds. Or maybe it was the strange impression that I wasn't entirely alone. Pushing the door open, I stepped inside. Dust hung in the air, glittering in the last rays of light that slipped through the broken windows. The scent was thick, salt, mold, and something metallic, like old blood. The staircase that spiraled upwards looked unstable, but I wasn't planning to go up just yet. I shone my flashlight around. The main floor was empty, save for a few decaying crates, a rusted lantern, and what looked like a weather logbook lying half buried in dust. I knelt and picked it up. The pages were brittle and yellowed, the ink smudged and running. The last entry read, "The light won't go out." I turned it off. I swear I did. But it keeps turning back on. I hear them on the stairs. I lock the door, but I think they're already inside. It was dated October 12th, 1972. I froze. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Outside, the wind had picked up, and the door groaned on its hinges behind me. I turned quickly, heart pounding, but there was nothing there. Just fog pressing against the frame like a living thing. And yet, for a moment, I was sure I'd seen something move past the doorway. A shape, quick and low to the ground. I told myself it was the wind, that it was just a raccoon, that the logbook was probably a joke, but deep down something felt wrong. The air had changed, denser, heavier, like the place had suddenly become aware of me, like it had been waiting. I stepped back toward the exit, but a loud clang echoed from above, like something, or someone, had just dropped a metal object on the top floor. I stared up at the dark spiral staircase, and for the first time in years, I felt truly afraid. I should have left. Every part of my body told me to turn around, walk out that door, and never come back, but something deeper. Curiosity maybe, or something darker, held me there. That sound from above. It wasn't just an object falling. It had rhythm, intention, like footsteps, slow, measured, heavy. I held my breath, waiting to hear it again. Silence. Still, I found myself climbing the staircase. Each step creaked under my weight, echoing through the hollow tower. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied. Dust floated in the beam, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else moved just beyond its reach. The second floor was cramped, filled with cobwebs and scattered remnants of another life. Mugs with faded floral prints, a torn coat hanging from a rusty hook, a small wooden chair beside a cracked window. I panned the light around slowly. Nothing seemed fresh or disturbed. Then I saw it. A set of damp footprints, bare feet, human, leading from the center of the room to the edge of the window. The glass was broken there, but the prints stopped suddenly, as if whoever had made them had vanished into thin air. My mind raced with possibilities, but none of them made sense. There were no signs of anyone else entering the tower, and the ground outside was rocky and steep. No one could have climbed up without me hearing them. A cold draft blew past me, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned. There was nothing there. But the chair that had been against the wall, was now facing me. I hadn't heard it move. I was sure I hadn't looked away long enough for something like that to happen, unnoticed. "Is someone here?" I called out, trying to sound firm, though my voice wavered. No answer. Only the soft moan of the wind as it seeped through cracks in the walls. I climbed to the next level, higher into the tower. The air grew colder. The scent of the sea mixed now with something sour, like rotting meat. I gagged, pulling my hoodie over my nose. My flashlight flickered again, and for a brief second, I saw something in the beam. A face, pale, hollow-eyed, watching from the corner. But when I aimed the light there again, it was gone. I reached what must have been the keeper's quarters. There were old photos scattered across the floor, sepia-toned portraits of a man in uniform, a woman holding a child, all of them unsmiling. One frame lay shattered, the glass ground into the wooden boards. The image inside was burned at the edges, but the face, his eyes, still stared out at me, intense and accusing. Suddenly, the walls began to creak. Not from the wind. This was something else. A pulse, a rhythm, like the tower was breathing. I backed away, bumping into a bookshelf, and a book fell to the floor with a thud. It opened to a page filled with handwritten notes, barely legible. One line stood out, repeated over and over in shaky ink. "It watches from the light. It never left." The moment I read it, the tower light, long broken and dead, flashed on for a single second. My heart nearly stopped. The beam sliced through the fog outside, illuminating the cliff for a moment before going dark again. My hands trembled as I clutched the railing, trying to convince myself it was a power surge or faulty wiring, even though I knew there was no power here. No working cables, no electricity. Then I heard it again, footsteps, but this time, they weren't above me. They were below. Something was climbing the stairs. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I stepped backward, trying to calm my breathing, trying to believe this wasn't really happening. But each creak of the stair matched the beat of my heart. I could hear it now, breathing, wet, raspy breathing, like lungs long unused. And then a voice, soft whispering, right next to my ear, though no one was near. "You shouldn't have come." I spun around, the flashlight whipping widely across the room. Empty. Still. But I knew something was in here with me. and it had been waiting a long, long time. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in place, gripping the flashlight like it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. The breathing had stopped, the footsteps had ceased, but the silence felt worse. It was the kind of silence that presses in, fills your ears, chokes your thoughts. The kind that isn't empty but full, full of something unseen, just behind the veil. I had to move. With every step I took, toward the final staircase, the one leading to the light chambers at the top, my legs grew heavier. Not from fatigue, but from dread. Each creak beneath my feet sounded sharper, more deliberate. I could almost feel eyes on my back, but I didn't dare turn around. I just kept climbing. The trapdoor to the lantern room was slightly ajar, rust flaking from its hinges. I pushed it open with the end of my flashlight and slowly hoisted myself up. The wind howled up here, colder than I'd felt all day. The shattered windows let in long fingers of mist, and shards of old glass crunched beneath my boots. In the center stood the massive, rusted lantern, the one that had inexplicably flared to life minutes earlier. There were burn marks all around it, blackened trails like fingers reaching out across the floor. Then I saw it, scratched into the metal base of the lantern, over and over again, were the same words from the journal. It watches from the light it never left. My breath caught. This wasn't a warning. It was a confession. And suddenly I understood. There hadn't been a malfunction. The light turning on, that was the entity. That was it. The thing that had lingered since 1972, since the last keeper vanished. The villagers weren't just superstitious. They were terrified, and for good reason, because something unnatural had taken root here, using the light as its vessel. Not just to see, but to lure, to call. And I had answered. I turned to leave, to run, to escape this cursed place. But the trapdoor slammed shut behind me with a metallic bang. I rushed to it, pulling hard, but it wouldn't budge. Something was holding it from below. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath fogged in front of me. That same voice, low, gurgling, inhuman, filled the chamber. He tried to leave too. I whipped around, and there, in the broken glass reflection of the lantern, I saw a figure standing directly behind me. Tall, gaunt, drenched in water, eyes glowing with faint, sickly light. Its face was stretched in a frozen scream, mouth open too wide, skin clinging to its bones. I spun, swinging the flashlight. Nothing, but the reflection remained. I stared at it, horrified. The figure didn't mimic my movements. It just stared back. Then slowly, it smiled. The light flared on again. I screamed and dropped to my knees, covering my eyes as the beam scorched the room, but I could still see it, burned into my vision like an afterimage. That thing, no, that presence, pouring out of the lantern like smoke, like shadow, crawling along the floor toward me. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My thoughts were jumbled, memories flooding in that weren't mine. Ships crashing against the rocks, voices crying out for help, the flicker of the light as it refused to guide them home. And then I knew the truth. The lighthouse didn't fail in 72. It chose not to shine. The keeper hadn't disappeared. He'd been taken, consumed, and whatever had replaced him, whatever wore his memories like a skin, it had stayed, waiting for someone foolish enough to come looking. Someone like me. The light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that moment, I felt something reach for me. Not with hands, but with intention. It slipped into my thoughts, my memories, my name. I tried to scream, but it was already inside. I wasn't alone anymore, and I would never leave this place. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the lantern room anymore. The air was still, heavy, and choked with salt. Everything was dark, but not the kind of darkness that comes with night. This was something deeper, thicker, like the world itself had been swallowed whole. I tried to move, but my body felt slow, like I was wading through molasses. Then I heard it again. The voice. It watches. From the light. But this time, it wasn't outside me. It was me. I staggered to my feet. I was still inside the lighthouse, but everything was wrong. The walls were twisted, dripping with moisture, and the floorboards pulsed like a living thing beneath my feet. Shadows moved where there shouldn't be any light, whispering words I couldn't understand. I knew then. I wasn't just in the lighthouse. I was inside it, like I'd been swallowed by the place itself. I stumbled through a warped hallway, no longer sure what was up or down. The staircase had changed, spiraling in impossible directions. At one point, I found myself walking upside down, the ceiling beneath my feet, as though gravity no longer mattered here. Time didn't seem to move, or maybe it moved in circles. I could hear echoes of my own voice, screams, gasps, coming from rooms I hadn't entered yet. And then, in the center of it all, I saw him, the lighthouse keeper, or what was left of him. He stood in a chamber, lit by an eerie bluish glow, hunched over, his back unnaturally arched. His skin looked translucent, veins like seaweed writhing underneath. But his eyes, they were human, sad, trapped. He looked right at me. "Don't fight it," he croaked. "The light binds you now." I shook my head, backing away. "No, I'm not staying. I'm not ending up like you." "You already have." The room shifted. I blinked, and suddenly I was back in the keeper's quarters, standing in front of the cracked mirror. But something was wrong. The reflection wasn't mine. It was him. I stared, frozen, as the reflection moved independently, smiling when I wasn't, tilting its head in the opposite direction. Then slowly, it raised its hand and pressed it to the glass. Against my will, my own hand moved up to match it. Our palms met, and just like that, I was yanked through the mirror. I landed hard on the rocky ground outside the lighthouse. The storm had cleared. The sky was gray, calm. I could hear gulls crying in the distance, the waves crashing far below. I was out. I sat up, gasping for breath, clutching the cold earth beneath me. The lighthouse loomed above, quiet once again. No light in the window, no sound. It was over. Or so I thought. I made it back to the village just before dusk. The locals stared at me, pale with fear, whispering under their breath. One elderly woman took my hand in hers and whispered, "You shouldn't have gone up there. It never lets go." I didn't understand until I looked into a mirror again. At first, it was subtle. A twitch at the corner of my eye. A smirk I didn't mean to make. Then the dream started. Always the light. Always the voice. Always the sea. And slowly, I began to forget pieces of my own life. My voice would sometimes sound off, deeper, like an echo of someone else. I stopped sleeping. I stopped going out. And eventually, I stopped seeing my own reflection. Every mirror shows him now.